Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Anderson. This is Chapter 22, Section 4, Nationalism Threatens Old Empires. We'll be talking about nationalism in the Ottoman and Hapsburg empires. And at the end of this PowerPoint, we will also throw in France after Napoleon III. The objectives describe how nationalism contributed to the decline of the Hapsburg Empire. If you guys remember, there are several nationalities in the Austrian Empire, and they all want their own country. List the main characteristics of the dual monarchy, that will be Austria-Hungary, and understand how the growth of nationalism affected the Ottoman Empire. Also included is the Third Republic and anti-Semitism in France after Napoleon III. Please look at the terms and people. How did the desire for national independence among ethnic groups weaken and ultimately destroy the Austrian and Ottoman empires? Both empires will be gone at the end of World War I. The Austrian Habsburgs and Ottoman Turks ruled empires with diverse ethnic groups. Nationalistic feeling grew among these groups, and the power of the empires will decline. Europe was a patchwork of different nationalities between 1800 and 1914. Nationalists pushed for self-rule, which brought about the decline of both empires. During the early 1800s, the Habsburg rulers of Austria tried to prevent change and ignored liberal demands. We saw that when we talked about the revolutions of 1848. They even tried to prevent industrialization, which honestly makes no sense, since industrialization will bring, I would think, better economics for the entire empire, fearing that it would change the empire's traditional way of life. Nevertheless, factories sprung up by the 1840s in Habsburg lands and caused changes, including the growth of cities and all the reforms that are necessary with the beginning of industrialization. Austria was an empire of very diverse people with rival goals. Nationalist feelings grew during the mid-1800s. Please remember the revolutions of 1848. The Hungarian revolutionaries will actually achieve something under Louis Kossuth, which will be then crushed in 1849 by the Russians. The Hungarians still will want a right to rule themselves. Francis Joseph will become the emperor of the Austrian Empire in the year 1848. He is 18 years old. He will rule until 1916. He will be the longest ruling emperor of the Habsburgs. The new emperor made some reforms, including the formation of a legislature, but honestly, this isn't going to work. You guys remember 1849, everything is dissolved. After Austria's defeat in its war with Prussia, Hungarians pressured the Habsburgs for a compromise, and it will come. The Hungarian leader, Ferenc Deák, known as the wise man of the nation, helped to work out a compromise called the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary, and we will refer to the Austrian Empire from this point on as Austria-Hungary. It will be formed in 1867. The dual monarchy is as follows. They will each have their own constitution, their own parliament, and their own capital, Vienna and Budapest, and they will share the Emperor Francis Joseph, who will rule both as Emperor of Austria and King of Hungary. They will share the ministries of finance, defense, and foreign affairs, all under Emperor Francis Joseph. Despite the compromise, nationalist unrest continued to increase in the empire. There are more than just Hungarians in this empire. Remember, there are Croats and Slovenes and Slovaks and numerous others. The Slavic people still lacked a voice in the government. Nationalist leaders called on them to unite. The Ottoman Empire is going to face the same thing. The Ottomans ruled a multinational empire which began in 1453 that stretched from Eastern Europe to North Africa and the Middle East. Many revolts broke out against the Ottomans in the 1800s as nationalist groups will seek self-rule. If you notice on this map, Serbia, Romania, Greece are independent Balkan states. The Ottoman Empire is right here in the deeper purple. However, Bosnia-Herzegovina will be occupied by Austria. This is where problems are certainly going to arise in 1914. The Ottoman Empire faced challenges from other European powers in the mid-1800s. In fact, the Ottoman Empire was known as the sick man of Europe. It had been around for an awfully long time. It was on its way out. Russia pushed south toward Istanbul and the Black Sea. Remember the Crimean War of 1855. Austria-Hungary took control of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Britain and France eyed Ottoman lands in the Middle East and North Africa, which it will eventually get with the peace treaties after World War I. Rivalries contributed to conflicts in the Balkans to the point where the Balkan powder keg would explode. And we'll see that when everything is leading to 1914 and World War I. The Franco-Prussian War led to a new political era in France. Here we're going to talk about what happened in France after the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. With the capture of Napoleon III, Republicans in Paris proclaimed the Second Empire ended and the Third Republic is born. It will last for 70 years. Under the Third Republic, the French legislature had two houses, the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies. The Chamber of Deputies was elected by universal male suffrage. Both houses will choose the president. However, the president is more of a figurehead. The real power is in the hands of the premier. Now it gets complicated. Unlike Britain, France had a multi-party system. To form a government, different parties would join in a coalition, so they had to cooperate with each other. In politics, that's incredibly difficult. If a coalition broke apart, new elections were held and new coalitions formed. At this point, when there was a new coalition, once a coalition, controlled enough votes, it could then name a premier and form a cabinet. In the first 10 years of the Third Republic, 50 different coalition governments formed and fell. This is going to make it incredibly difficult to rule France. However, France will prosper. The government faced an early challenge when rebels set up the Paris Commune in 1871. Called communards, the rebels wanted to save the Republic from royalists. Patriots among them dreamed of rejecting the terms of the treaty with Prussia from the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. Radicals dreamed of establishing a new socialist order. The National Assembly ordered the communards to disband. When they refused, troops were sent to restore order. Civil war raged for weeks. Never good when there's a civil war. That is Frenchmen, once again, killing Frenchmen. During the 1880s and 1890s, France prospered and its overseas empire grew, but the government was plagued by scandals, some more important than others. Minister of War accused of plotting against the government, nephew of the president trying to sell nominations to the Legion of Honor. And then we get to the Dreyfus affair, anti-Semitism alive and well in France. Alfred Dreyfus was a Jewish officer in the French army. He actually held the distinction of being the first Jew to reach the rank of major in France. He was tried and convicted of spying. Dreyfus did not receive a fair trial. He was not allowed to see the evidence before him. Evidence was hidden. Basically, evidence in 1896 pointed to Ferdinand Esterhazy as a spy. The army refused to give Dreyfus a new trial. Dreyfus will be sentenced to life imprisonment on Devil's Island, which is a penal colony off the coast of South America and French Guiana. This affair will damage France for decades. Dreyfusards are liberals and Republicans who want to uphold ideals of justice and equality. They seriously want a new trial for Dreyfus. In 1906, finally, Dreyfus will be cleared of all his charges and restored his honors. He will only be readmitted in the army in 1995. The writer Émile Zola, who we have already met, was charged with libel for defending Dreyfus. This is a famous article he wrote for a newspaper, J'accuse. In this newspaper article, Emile Zola charged the army and government with suppressing the truth. He will be convicted of libel, which is the publishing of false and damaging statements, and he will flee into exile. The Dreyfus Affair split the nation, but the real issue is anti-Semitism, which is alive and well in Europe. Most Jews were poor, lived in slums, and were subject to increasing discrimination. This isn't the first time Europe has seen anti-Semitism, and it will only get worse from this point on. Rising anti-Semitism led Theodor Herzl to call for a separate Jewish state, which will not happen until the 20th century. In the 1900s, reform did come to France. Government support for the church ended, schools were made public, and payments to clergy ended. There were now freedom for all religions. In 1896, women are finally getting some control, although they will not get the right to vote until after World War II. By 1914, France was the largest democratic nation in Europe. It was prosperous, had had an overseas empire, which we will see in imperialism, when we talk about Africa. It had a constitution that protected basic rights. But France was eager to avenge its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War and regain the lost provinces of Alsace and Lorraine. And we will see that when we get to 1914 and World War I. Thank you.